Okay, we're on YouTube Live. We're going.
Hey.
So I've got a couple people here on Zoom via my college, which you won't see, but you can hear. Would you like to say hi?
Hello. Hi.
Currently, it's just us. So if you've got some questions you'd like to ask, we can get right into it. Before we go there, though, I'll just say that I am the founder of Your Body Never Lies. And today's show is about answering questions for people who are taking the Your Body Never Lies online play shop. This workshop you can take for free on YouTube. It's at youtube.com/free of limits. And all you need to do is follow along the videos. And by the time you're done, if you understood it, you will be complete with your suffering for your past. So with that said, what are our questions today?
A lot of what we've been talking about lately is meditation for kind of like energetic souls or people that are always moving and have a hard time stopping. And meditation through movement. Like we were just discussing the weed pulling last night and how that was really meditating. But we're still like performing an action, but our mind is like totally in the present. Is this, because you still have to think about the movements that you're doing, right? I was
not really. You can feel it.
That's all I'm saying. My body was just on go. Like my mind was where I needed it to be for my body to do what it needed it to do, despite me being freezing. And as a tiny person that is always like, thanks, no, I'm good, I'm going inside. When I came back to reality, I was like, oh shoot, I have to go put a jacket on. My fingers are about to freeze. Like I didn't realize that my body was like that. I was like somewhere else with them like pulling.
Okay. There's many forms of meditation, and none of them really involve taking action. But that doesn't mean that taking action isn't meditation, or that you can't be meditating while taking action. It's just two different things. And
would you feel like active meditation is similar to a flow state?
Well, the meditation is just a word. It has a specific definition. And there's many forms of meditation. Wait, don't interrupt. There's many forms of meditation. You can't really equate one with another. Or what's the point of the meditation in most cases is to settle down and to slow down. So that's go ahead.
That was my question, was like, it's not the same as, it's just like neurologically, biologically, in the body, how it translates is perhaps similar to a flow state, while we're talking within the context of potentially athletes or people that are doing active forms of meditation, where they're not just still and sitting in Anza with doing the, and like it's a different form. I'm trying to create schema in my brain so I can understand it. Because I'm just trying to understand.
Right on. It's basically impossible. The whole point of meditation is to understand meditation. It's something that you sit and attempt before even feeling it. You can't feel meditation until you meditate. So it's really impossible to describe or explain to somebody the correct way to do it. And there's many forms of meditation. So it's also about what end results are you looking for. Because some people meditate to get out of their body. Some people meditate to shut their mind down. Some people meditate to feel unconditional love. There's all different reasons to meditate, but it all involves stopping the play of activity between our internal self and our external self. play of activity you do with the world, thinking about the world over here. Why is my heater on? Why is the fan going? Why am I cold? These things, well, why am I cold is internal maybe, but we take attention away from our outer experience, what's happening outside of our body, and put our attention on what's happening within our body. And notice the correlation of what's happening in our body according to what we see or what we feel or what we're thinking or what images come to us. But in every instance, no matter what meditation you're interested in, if you haven't completed your suffering, if you still suffer, or if you're meditating to get rid of your suffering, you will fail. Because what we suffer for is also what prevents us from being successful at meditation, which is this feeling of being not enough, which is what the play shop on, to some great degree is all about. It's all about finding out where not enough comes from and then pulling the rug out from under it so that we don't get wrapped up in it. And if we're stuck feeling not enough in some way, that we're not good enough or not smart enough or not wanted, what happens is that when we meditate, those sufferings become amplified. And if you just sit down and try to meditate your way past that minefield, I just know people who've hurt themselves, not physically, but a little mentally. Like you can end up having some thoughts that don't make sense. You can come up with coping mechanisms that don't really work. It's really better to set some of the more like spiritual aspects of life aside until we handle the mundane, which is essentially this idea that we're not good enough. I mean, the reason somebody might be here to watch the video is they feel not good enough, but they think if they learn something from me, then maybe they can become good enough. But that's just not the case. The idea of good enough or not good enough is an illusion and a lie. And it doesn't matter whether you think something is good enough or whether you think it's not good enough. The whole labeling things as more than or less than or good, bad is what keeps us suffering. And it's also what prevents us from being able to meditate. And by meditate, I mean successfully meditate, which means when you sit down and close your eyes and you choose to feel the unconditional love that's everywhere, it just shows up because it's already here. Like all you got to do is tune into it and feel it. But if you feel that if you're suffering from being not good enough, or if you're suffering of being not wanted, then when you find that place, you're going to feel not wanted. Or when you find it, you're going to wonder, oh, is this really good enough? Is this really unconditional love? And you're going to question it. But it's that the questioning that we do of ourself that creates the suffering. If we start to go try to advance spiritually, that gets turned inside out and we start projecting it outside and we start thinking, oh, I'm not good enough to be here, or I can't learn this, or this teacher isn't good enough to teach me what I need to know. So then we spend our whole life looking for the perfect teacher. But the fact is, everywhere we go, if we always feel that we're not enough, or we always feel that that teacher is not enough, or this teaching isn't giving us what we want, that's purely internal suffering. And it's both personal and impersonal, but it literally has nothing to do with our current circumstance, current environment, current state of mind, or anything else. It has to do with a specific event in our history that literally makes us feel disconnected from the rest of the world. So the play shop is to heal that. And once that's healed and we're done feeling not enough, then when we go to learn something new, we can just accept it and do it. So someone who's understands not enough, knows where it comes from and has let it go and knows how to let it go when it pops up again. If they go to meditate and feel unconditional love, they'll just feel the unconditional love and that's it. They just feel it and it's successful. But when we feel that we're not enough and we go to, no matter how much detail we have, and if we know the meditation perfectly, you go to meditate, you go to tune into the love and you sit. And then while you're feeling it, we start thinking, oh, is this good enough? Am I doing it right? Is anybody noticing that I'm feeling the love? These little mentalisms that drive us all nuts, they pop up. So, my answer for meditation is always go back to the basics, because if you're wondering whether this meditation is good enough or not, or whether you're doing it right, really all that's happening is it's just a new way to churn up our suffering. Don't bother. It just gets in the way. Is that a question?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Can you accidentally fall into meditation?
Yes.
Okay.
Athletes typically do. If you hit
that's where I was going. I think I did that yesterday.
Yeah,
That's what happened.
Yeah, you totally can. Because especially with repetition, we can go on autopilot and you can just sort of watch your body doing something over and over. And that even happens in meditation. You sit still and pretty soon you're just watching yourself sitting still and it's comfortable. But you can be pulling weeds, and that repetition, you start watching yourself pulling weeds.
That was what.
And pretty soon you're just feeling yourself pulling weeds and feeling how much you love pulling weeds, and you don't even notice the action. It's all about how it's making you feel inside. That is a meditation.
And that's exactly what happened yesterday.
Yeah, and taking action to achieve meditation is perfectly reasonable. It's not necessary, but athletes fall into that.
Okay.
You know, and not all athletes, but the ones who are at the top of their game and really, looking to become the best they can, typically will fall into that state.
That makes sense.
It's and just so no one's confused, I don't mean to say that when you meditate you fall out of your body, or when you meditate you become disassociated from your body. It's different than that. It's just it's a quality of awareness that that feels still and doesn't need to go anywhere. For me, that's the initial meditation that really matters, that's really valuable, is the one where we can be still and feel safe being still and not need to go anywhere. Because for me anyway, and for a lot of people, the idea of being not enough or being not wanted is exactly what gets me out of stillness. If I'm like just sitting here still and I start wondering, oh, did I shave good enough? Now my wheels are thinking, oh, did I shave good enough to be on video today? Right? I mean, now I want to go do something. I want to take care of it. I got to fix it. And that's what our suffering does. It makes us want to fix things. If I can just do X, Y, Z, then I'll be good enough. If I just do this, then I'll be okay. But the fact of the matter is, once you do that, then there's something else we got to do. And it's a never-ending wheel. And whether that's the Dharma wheel or the karma wheel, or it doesn't really matter, but it's a hamster wheel. You do one thing and then you want to reach to another. Susan, who's another student at the college, pointed out to me that the second Cat in the Hat book, Cat in the Hat Comes Back by Dr. Seuss, is all about this. It's all about, you go to fix one thing and then you got another problem, you got to fix that, and then another problem, you got to fix that. But every time we do that, all we're really doing is we're trying to fix good enough. We're trying to make it enough. We're trying to make it good enough, either for ourselves or for somebody else or for its own purposes. But that idea of that we have to make something enough is suffering. Literally what causes our suffering. Because anything, if you get in a car accident and you start thinking, oh, I wasn't driving good enough, like literally now the car accident's a major issue, right? Now you've got to drag this issue with you, this evidence that you were not enough because you had a car accident. But if you can have a car accident and not let it trigger you're not enough, then it's just an accident. It's not evidence for anything. It's just an accident. Like, who cares? It's just something that happened. But we can have that attitude about anything in life. When the video I talked about my initial suffering, about my first experience in school, was a kid putting my finger in a pencil sharpener and like sharpening my finger.
No, I never heard.
You didn't hear that video?
Or anything?
Oh, well, that's in the video, Best Guru on the Block.
Oh, okay, the recent one.
Yeah, it's from a recent video. So I don't take that as evidence to mean anything. It's just a memory I have. It doesn't mean that they hated me. It doesn't mean that I didn't know how to stand up for myself or don't know how to stand up for myself. It just doesn't mean anything. It's just a memory. If it means anything, it just means that I was considered the other, and got picked on because of it. But that's more of an observation than a judgment or a feeling of guilt or anything else.
So it doesn't place intrinsic charge onto it. It's just like it's an
It's just
external
a-
experience that happened.
Thank you. That's a great way to put it. And for people watching at home, so that's what we're talking about. If you take that intrinsic charge, right, and figure out where it comes from for any event at all, and you understand it, then it does not have to reappear for new events, and it will dissipate from old events. So the reason that our history contains charge is that our history proves to us the negative beliefs that we have about ourselves. So the memory that we have about getting thrown out of third grade class proves to us that we're not smart. And that girl broke up with us over text message. That proves to us that we have no worth to people. When our history is evidence, negative, or evidence that proves a negative for what we have going on, then it has charge. But once you understand that that memories do not need to be evidence, because what they are collecting evidence for isn't real to begin with, which is the idea of being not enough or not good enough, then the memories let go of that intrinsic charge. They just don't have them. And even creating new memories, they just don't have a charge. You can have an experience that's crazy that in the past would have driven you mad, and today you can have it and go, oh, okay, and then move on with your day. Because nothing will make you feel not good enough. And when somebody does try to make you feel not good enough, if you do get upset, it's not because you are feeling not good enough. It's because you don't like evil people trying to make you feel like less than you are. And now you're standing up for yourself. Whereas in the past, you might have been like, oh yeah, I really am not enough. Okay, I'll do whatever you say.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from knowing yourself.
Yeah, and it comes from knowing who you really are. Spirituality is not about becoming a better person. It's about finding out who you really are. Because the idea we have that we're not enough or not this or not as good as that person or could never fill in the blank. Oh, I could never do that. That's all a fantasy based on believing the negative thought that you're not enough. So the play shop is all about unraveling where that comes from, because once you see where it comes from, it loses most of its strength. And then it's just about picking at it a little bit, noticing it to help dissipate the rest of its strength until it's gone. So for some people, it happens very quickly. For other people, it takes a bit of time. But in every single case, every time you repeat the action of noticing when you feel not good enough and walk it back to your initial experience of feeling that way and recognize that it's not real, it's just a rekindled memory that was based on a lie, like you just don't believe it anymore. Like once you know something's a lie, there's no reason to believe it, and your body won't believe it either. So that's the purpose of the play shop. That's my purpose in being here, is to help people get through the play shop. There was somebody tuned in for a minute, but they're gone now. Well, if anybody has a question, you're welcome to chat it in on YouTube. And, but I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not good at lecturing. I like hearing questions.
That may have been our friend.
Go ahead.
So like kind of touching in on that part of figuring out like that it comes from a memory and everything. I'm still doing all this without thinking about the memory. The memory will just like pop up kind of like in my head if I go, okay, why am I feeling charged? I feel like, because I still have to reference the past in a way, right? To figure out what memory it is.
Well, no, because I mean, there are healing modalities that require you to figure out, okay, what's being rekindled? What's the memory that's happening here? But in YBNL, we don't do that. We just go for the first memory. Okay. Because every memory we have, they all started with a first memory. And our first memory, when we created mind to cope with being not enough. It's literally ego is simply there to cope with not enough. It's to make up for feeling disconnected from our source. So there's an initial event that happened to us where not only were we disconnected from our source, but then that made us feel that we were not enough. Right? I mean, that's why we're disconnected, because we're not enough. So ego gets created to make up for that. Since we're not connected, we need this ego to keep us safe because we don't have source to keep us safe. That unravels once you recognize that the initial event wasn't what you thought it was at the time. It's kind of like if you go to sit down and you fall on the floor because your chair's missing, you might get really mad and think that somebody took your chair and was being very disrespectful. And it might make you feel that everybody hates you if they thought it was so funny to take your chair away to make you fall on the floor so everybody could laugh at you. Someone who thinks that might walk out of the room and never speak to those people again. I mean, depending on their headspace, right? But maybe what actually happened is that, you know, somebody very innocently just needed a chair and saw a chair wasn't being used, so they grabbed it and sat in it. And it was very innocent that you didn't notice that someone had taken a chair that you were expecting to use. So there was no plan. There was no nefarious purpose. There was no trying to get you. It was just circumstance. So once you find out that a heavy trauma or a big dissociative event was actually innocent, like the charge goes away. You know, like suddenly if we had left the room thinking everybody hated us and had been making fun of us and had dissed us that way, if you suddenly found out or watched the video and saw that it was totally innocent, you're like, you would lose all that charge in your body and suddenly feel comfortable again and get to go into the room and then tap on that person's shoulder and say, hey, I think you took my chair. And it wouldn't be a big deal.
Right.
But you have to know the truth. If you just get wrapped up in what your mind thinks is going on, I mean, any story could be told.
It's an illusion.
So yeah, the truth really does set us free. When you find out like what's actually true underneath what's bothering us, then that thing that's bothering us just stops bothering us. Because it's, you know, the thing that bothers us about being not enough, it's a lie. If it was true, it wouldn't bother you. You'd just be like, so what? But you know it's not true, and so it creates this huge tension. You know, it's like most people spend their life like doing this push me, pull you back and forth of good enough, not good enough. What do I do? How do I do this? How do I get better? How do I hide that I'm not enough? All the coping mechanisms we have for the ridiculousness. You know, that's the freedom that comes from your body never lies, from listening to your body language and figuring this out, is that it's free from needing to churn that mental nonsense. It's free to just be able to go outside and enjoy the birds, or to pull weeds, and instead of it feeling like a chore and like work, it just feels like fun. Because there's a meditation and a rhythm and a, you know, and an end result.
I didn't know what the end result was until I stood up either. I was just going.
Nice. Yeah. No, it's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So to go back to the point around meditation, once we're done engaging with the nonsense about being not enough or not, now it's not only about being able to meditate comfortably. You can do anything you want comfortably. If you want to learn how to drive a bus, whereas before you may have felt intimidated because you felt you weren't enough, it'd be really hard, you didn't think you'd pass the exam, all those thoughts go away. So now the freedom is anything you desire. Oh, I want to be a bus driver. Okay, go to bus driving school. No fear. Oh, I want to learn swing dancing. Cool, let's go try it. There's no fear about people are going to make fun of me or I'm not going to be good enough or anything else. It just doesn't matter. Don't care. If I see somebody laughing at me because I'm not good enough in some way, I don't take it personal. I just feel sorry for them that they're projecting their shit onto the world instead of dealing with it.
Yeah.
You know, like that's kind of like the attitude that comes is, you know, it's not personal.
Right.
It's like that quote, other people's opinions of me are no business of mine.
Yeah. No, they're not because, yeah, you know, Opinions are based on measuring and comparing,
Yeah.
and the opinions are basically an attempt to avoid feeling that we're not enough.
Mhm.
I don't want to tell you about how that thing over there isn't enough. That way you won't think about how I'm not good enough. It's, but the not good enough translates into many, many ways. People who are like political activists, right? They have to be right and get things their way for it to be good enough. And if it's not their way, then it's not good enough to them. And so, like, that's another point of contention in society. But it's all about who gets to decide what's good enough or what's not good enough. But if they would just deal with their personal issue, governance would be a lot easier because we wouldn't have to argue about what's good enough or not good enough. Instead, we would just go with science or go with what works. Yeah. So it's a big thing. But what matters truly is how it affects us personally, how it impacts society. That gets worked on when we work on ourselves personally. So.
And like kind of going off of what you say about how it affects us personally, I kind of was curious about meditation, like time limits too. I've noticed that in times that I feel overwhelmed or I become anxious, I'll close my eyes and, just say, hey, be here now, and I'll focus on the moment. And I realize that the moment's like really pleasant and nothing's happening to me. Is this possibly me pushing it off and ignoring the problem? Or like, can I really be back to centered self that quickly within the matter of like 5 minutes?
No, you totally can, but that doesn't mean you can ignore the issues. So if you get a bill that's due in 2 weeks, it's overwhelming. That might make you panic, right? And the cat might run out the door into the street, and that might make you panic. But if you get in a panic, you're not going to be able to deal with anything. So if you just do the quick meditate and get back to center and be here now, then you can go, oh, well, I've got 2 weeks to pay this bill. I've got plenty of time, set it aside. Okay, I better go get the cat and just take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
There doesn't have to be any worry. There doesn't have to be any fear. There doesn't have to be any concern. It can just be, well, let's take care of it.
Okay, because it's mostly just when I get in my head about feelings of being not good enough, not when I have like bills or responsibilities or anything.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just didn't know if that was like a valid form of meditation, because I know that if you meditate for longer, you might achieve more than if you just kind of do a quick little moment of meditation to resolve current stimuli, right? Would you say that, or?
Well, the hard part here is that there's many ways to meditate. So when you say meditation, it's hard to know exactly what you mean about like when you sit down.
Okay.
However, there's two ways. There's permanent healing, which is when you really understand where not enough comes from and you understand it's a lie and you just get it in your body and it's gone. Like it just can't come back. And then there's intellectually understanding that, but yet having to feel it in our body still. It's still like it still comes up. Oh, I feel like I'm not enough whenever I'm around this group of people or that group of people or whatever. When you quickly meditate to be here now, you're popping yourself out of that suffering. You're just popping out of it, but it's still there underneath the surface, but you're popping out. And it's totally valid because our ego trusts repetition. And your whole life, if you've been wrapped up or believing that you're not enough, then your ego trusts that. And your ego will just continually attempt to recreate it. But every time you step back to meditate and pop out of it and just be here now and notice, oh, right now I'm safe. Right now I am enough. Right now, I don't have anything to do. It's just living is nice. You just be here. Every time you do that, you're giving your ego an experience of repetition of how safe that is.
Mm.
And eventually that is a path that can completely negate not enough, because your ego will just start trusting being here now more than it trusts that you're not enough.
Right. It's familiar. It's the new familiar.
Right. But that's a temporary relief, because there can always be another trigger that will bring it back up, and then you've got to meditate again and be here now again. So you still have the suffering with you. It's just not in your face, and it's not so personal.
Okay.
But it's valid. It's good to do. It's just not the permanent healing. It's like, okay, every time I feel not good enough, I can't like take 10 minutes and remember where it comes from and like look at it and really feel it in my body. That's just not always appropriate. If I feel not enough and I start getting wrapped up, I might just snap into present time, be here now, and that all just gets set aside for later. But when you snap into being here now and you just start feeling how safe and loving everything it really is, you're in reality, but you're going to get pulled back to the suffering. Like we can only stay there so long until you can rest there, because you get that it's your natural place to be. You'll snap back to what your ego thinks is natural, which is this feeling of not enough, not good enough, not wanted, less than, on and on.
It's like learning how to shelve things instead of compartmentalizing things.
Exactly.
Like for later instead of compartmentalizing it, shoving it down.
Right. You don't want to shove it down, put it in a drawer and hide it. You want to look at it and go, okay, I'm going to get back to you later. And you want it on a shelf where it can fall down easily and hit you again. You don't want to bury it. The stuff that's buried is the stuff that impacts us the most. So when something bubbles up that you've buried, don't bury it again like it's bubbling up to be healed.
Okay.
Which, nobody on the channel will understand that, but like that's definitely what happened to me last night. So, like, I was good, and then like I hit something that was like I didn't think that I had, and a bunch of things came rushing in, and we were able to resolve it. But like, it was not something that I realized that I had repressed from like super, super deep in my childhood, and it was like the heaviest feeling of not enough that I felt in like I don't even know the last time I felt like that. It was a very uncomfortable feeling, so I like had to sit with it.
Yeah, but then once you sit with it, now you can talk about it, right? If that had come up 10 years ago, right now you'd pretend like it never happened, or you wouldn't remember, or it'd be buried again, or whatever else.
Yeah.
But just being able to talk about it is huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Pretty massive difference.
Your smile's a little bigger today. Good.
I feel better. I realized where it was coming from, so my like spirit doesn't feel so disgruntled about it.
Yeah. Good. That's great. Well, that's a great example of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
That's great.
Good. Well, the college is basically reopening really soon. I hope to see you back there a lot.
Okay. Yeah, there were a couple in there that looked pretty interesting. I just remember it said like unconditional love, decisiveness, or something, meditation. It's all great until it gets tested. Like it's like number 114 or something.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, yeah.
It looked really cool. But yeah, I've been thinking about using meditation to uncover some like trauma-based forgetfulness. Like I know that I was traumatized so much that I blocked a lot of things out of my memory, but I know that I still know them, but I don't know how to unlock them, just so that I don't think I'm getting the full picture.
Well, in a lot of therapy or healing modalities, people want to start from today and then peel off layers until you get down to your initial trauma. And so that's why people go to years of therapy, because every week you're going back a little bit in time and trying to get back to the earliest thing. So, excuse me. But all those things that we need to unravel, what they are, the traumas, they are evidence to prove our most negative belief we have about ourselves. So that time the teacher hit you, that time someone broke up with you, the time you got fired, the time you crashed your car, all of these things are evidence to prove to you that you are disconnected from source and that you're not enough. And the evidence is heavy. And when you've got a lot of evidence back there, it's so heavy that your mind won't let you look at it. It's like too much. So some people start taking medication to get past those things, start to swoop back, try to get back to what's there. But we all have the same, we're all born. We all have the same initial trauma. So in Your Body Never Lies, we just skip all the way back to that initial trauma, because it's the initial trauma that sets us up to collect the evidence that we're not enough. If you handle your initial trauma and realize that the belief it created that somehow we're not enough is a lie, then everything from then up until now is just a wash. Like it's like if all of these things are based on a lie, right? And then you get to the very bottom and you discover the lie. Now you're released from all of those things. It doesn't mean you're released 100%, but that intrinsic charge, the emotional angst that's attached to all those pieces of evidence, all those memories of not enough, just goes away. It has to. Because you know the truth. The truth is you are enough. You cannot be disconnected from source. And that's literally the illusion that keeps us believing all this, all the pretty lights everywhere. But you still get to experience it. It's one thing to know the information intellectually. It's another one to get it in your body. So to hear me talk about this material is like me trying to teach you over Zoom how to ride a bicycle. Yeah, you'll get it intellectually and it can make sense and make you feel good too. Oh, I know how to ride a bike now. But you won't really know how to ride a bike until you get on a bike, right? And you're not really going to know how freeing this is until you look at that initial event, until it opens itself up to you. And that's the purpose of the YBNL Play Shop, is to give you the tools, not only to open up the event to look at it, but to give us the tools so that when we do look at it, it's not overwhelming. So we can just go, oh, that is a lie. Because once we see that not enough is a lie, like what else is there? Literally every problem in the world starts from not enough. Why do we have to fix this or that? Because it's not enough. Why people go to war? Because something's not enough. Something's not good enough. Mm-hmm. Right? It's all about, no, I'm going to impose what I say is good enough on you, because what you say is good enough isn't good enough for me. It's not what I want. I.
Yes.
The good news is that when we start unraveling this stuff, it's not just personal. Like my personal experience is when I let go of my trauma, I suddenly became much more empathic. So I can empathize with people way better. It's crazy. Like I got to tone it down sometimes. Like, if I see somebody, I can totally fall into their energy and totally know what's going on and totally get it. But I can go there because it's not going to make me feel that I'm not enough. And also I'm not going to get triggered by them feeling that they're not enough, because I know it's a lie. When I meet somebody and I can see like where they feel not enough, I can also see past it because I know it's a lie. Whereas when I was much younger, if I could see somebody's not enough, I would pounce on it. Or I would use it, to my advantage in some way. Because I myself was traumatized and I myself got manipulated. People pushing my buttons to get me to do what they wanted. But that's the freedom that comes from handling our suffering. It's not just that the suffering goes away. It's that we reclaim this freedom to make choices that really got taken away. If we feel that we're not enough, then we limit our choices. If you've never had seafood before, and everybody tells you that crab's the best food in the world, then you might really want to eat crab. But if you've never been into a seafood restaurant before and you look in the window and people are in plastic bibs, they're using these little forks and they're like breaking the crab with the nutcracker. I mean, if you've never done that before and you're traumatized by not enough, you won't go in the restaurant. Because you don't want to be the guy that everyone's looking at going, oh, look, he's not good enough. He doesn't know how to open that crab. You don't want to feel like you don't know what you're doing, because that's going to be another layer of evidence to prove to you that you're not enough. And intellectually, this is silly. Intellectually, anyone could be like, well, of course, like this is whatever. But, your body never lies material is not intellectual material. It's corporal. You have to get it in your body. You can't just hear it in one ear and go, okay, I'm healed. No, you have to hear it in one ear and then see how it applies personally. Let it go. And then we get this freedom of being able to make choices, being able to feel a lot more, being able to connect with other people a lot more, knowing full well that we cannot ever be disconnected from our creator. Like you can't. Like you are a part of the universe. I mean, intellectually, you know you're part of the universe, right? I mean, look at your hand. It's in the room with you. Your body is part of the universe. And yet, when we suffer, there's this feeling like we're not. Like everyone else gets it except us. Well, we've been singled out in some way. And, if you feel singled out in some way, that means you're suffering, and it means that you could benefit greatly from the play shop. Like, that's what the play shop's for. And then every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. California time, you just tune in here and ask your questions, and then we'll get you through it. So my chat is open, so if anyone's watching live, you feel free to chat away a question on YouTube. Or this week, you can join the college and then ask on Zoom. But, I'm done with my suffering to a great degree, and I'm looking to help other people be done with theirs too. So whatever that needs to look like for people, I'm up for. But my plan right now is to have this free workshop on YouTube and then to answer questions every Saturday, because it's no skin off my back, to spend an hour on YouTube. So we'll see if it's enough. We'll see if it's good enough for everybody.
Yeah, even like what you were talking about, like trying new things. Now that I haven't really felt those insecurities, I'm way more receptive when I learn new things. I think I learn them better than I did before.
Oh, yeah. Well, when we're suffering not enough, then everything we learn, every new piece of information we learn has to go through a filter of, is this enough?
Yeah.
Is this what I want to learn? But when you're not suffering, you don't have those filters. And so information can land. Let it land and then choose whether you want to keep it or not. But while we're suffering, we try to choose before we let the information land, which is really funny to hear people argue about stuff. And it's like, come on, man, just let some new information in.
Yeah.
Please. So.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
It's natural, but
yeah.
Still amusing and shocking.
All right. Well, we've got almost 45 minutes on YouTube, so I think I'm going to stop that. I don't see any questions popping up. Anybody watching on YouTube, it's every Saturday, 10 a.m. California time. And I hope I see you next week. And if not next week, then the week after. And we'll get you through your suffering if you are. Or even if you just feel disconnected and want to get rid of that. Like, being connected is awesome. And it gets results. Intuition soars. That's for another day, though. All right. We'll talk soon. I'm going to end YouTube.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.